From the atmospheric single The Forest to the dreamy catchy pop song Just Like Heaven, the cURE are a band who haven't let one genre define them. And with over 40 years of experience and 13 studio albums to their name, they've more than certainly cemented their place as one of the most influential bands of all time. The cURE story began in 1972 when a group of school friends from Notre Dame Primary School started a band called The Obelisk. The lineup consisted of Mike Dempsey on guitar, Lawrence Tolhurst on percussion, Mark Kaneko on lead guitar, Alan Hill on bass and Robert Smith on keyboards. They then go on to St Wilfrid's Comprehensive where they continue to play music together, this time with Robert Smith on guitar and Mike Dempsey on bass guitar. The group would regularly attend a local church hall where they'd rehearse David Bowie, Jimi Hendrix and Alex Harvey songs. After going through a few more names such as Malice and Easy Cure and a few lineup changes, and the brief encounter with the look-obsessed German label Hansa, the now trio were ready to rise to stardom, now under the name The cURE. After being signed to Fiction Records in 1978, the cURE began recording their debut album. Three Imaginary Boys, released in 1979, was received well by critics despite Smith's vexation with the album. The album includes songs such as Jumping Someone Else's Train, 10:15 Saturday Night, and also a Jimi Hendrix cover of Foxy Lady sung by Mike Dempsey. The album would later be re-released in America as a compilation album with the addition of the single Boys Don't Cry.
Boys don't cry. Boys don't cry.
After the album dropped, the cURE would then go on tour with Susie and the Banshees for their Join Hands tour. Just before the tour, however, and suffering from nervous exhaustion, Susie and the Banshees guitarist John McKay had dropped out of the band. Smith had offered up his guitar services for not only the cURE, but also the Banshees for the tour, meaning he was playing 2 shows a night. Smith recalls, "On stage that first night with the Banshees, I was blown away by how powerful I felt playing that kind of music. It was so different to what we were doing with the cURE. Before that, I'd wanted us to be at the Buzzcocks or Elvis Costello, the punk Beatles. Being a Banshee really changed my attitude as to what I was doing." After the tour, Mike Dempsey had left and was replaced by Simon Gallup. Another addition to the band was Matthew Hartley on keyboards. With the new lineup and Smith's new perspective on music was found, they were ready to go into the studio to make their second album, 17 Seconds. Because of their lack of creative control with the first album, the group had a lot more room to implement their own influences on their second album, 17 Seconds, released in 1980. 17 Seconds, a collection of dark, brooding, sombre songs that are completely disparate from Three Imaginary Boys, went down very well with critics. It's also home to their first UK hit single, A Forest, which placed at number 31 in the UK singles chart. That same year, the cURE went on tour to promote not only the 17 Seconds album, but also the newly repackaged Boys Don't Cry compilation album in America. After the tour had ended, Matthew Hartley had left, stating, "I realised that the group is heading more towards suicidal, sombre music. That sort of thing didn't interest me at all." After the departure of Matthew Hartley, the cURE reconvened back into the studio with 17 Seconds co-producer Mike Hedges to co-produce their next album, Faith. Faith was a continuation of the sombre music that had been established by their album prior. The 1981 album peaked at number 14 in the UK albums chart and received very positive reviews by critics. It was around this time as well that the cURE had also released their non-album single, Charlotte Sometimes. The dismal mood of the music and the sombre attitudes displayed on stage by the band had started to have an effect on them, with Robert stating that he'd leave the stage in tears because of this. With the band at an all-time low, what with band arguments, heavy drug use and Robert Smith's depression driving the band's somber music, it was time to make their fourth album, Pornography.
Could start a fucking jungle side up here. This is for Mary. This is called 100 Years.
The recording sessions saw the band at their worst and on the brink of collapse. Despite this, however, the album was a smash hit in the UK, peaking at number 8 in the UK albums chart, which is their first breakthrough in the top 10. Pornography was received very well by critics and is often cited as one of the most important albums of Gothic music, which features their hit single, The Hanging Garden. In support of the album, the 14 Explicit Moments tour had followed suit. The tour had spawned what is now the signature cURE look, what with big black-combed hair as signature smeared lipstick. Tensions were high between the band, and Robert and Simon's relationship had taken a huge toll after a series of fights backstage during the tour. After the tour, drummer Lawrence Tolhurst went to France to clear his head, and Robert Smith went back to England to clean up. And as far as everyone was concerned, the cURE was over. Following the permanent departure of Susie the Banshees guitarist, Robert Smith was able to offer his services yet again, but this time as a permanent member of the Banshees. Smith had only anticipated he'd stay there for about 3 months, but ended up staying for about 18 months. A couple of months after Smith joined, however, lead singer Susie Sue and drummer Budgie, real name Peter Clark, had left England to go work on their own side project, The Creatures. This gave bassist Steve Severin of Susie the Banshees and Robert Smith the chance to make their own side project, The Glove. The Glove, founded in 1983, was the brainchild of Steve Severin, Robert Smith and lead singer Jeanette Landry. They released their first and only album, Blue Sunshine, to poor reviews. The project failed horribly, but it did spawn the release of the single Punch Me With Kisses, recorded in 1982. In between tours and recording sessions for Susie the Banshees, Robert Smith had reconvened back into the studio with Lawrence Tolhurst to work on more music. Chris Parry, the head of Fiction Records, had an idea of reinventing the cURE sound. With Tolhurst now on the keyboards instead of drums, the now duo recorded the song Let's Go to Bed. Let's Go to Bed was a single released in 1983 and was completely different from what the cURE had done prior. It was much more dancier and poppier and much more commercial than what they'd been doing before. The single reached number 44 in the UK top charts. Following the release of Let's Go to Bed came The Walk,
I called you after midnight, ran until I burned.
and then The Love Cats.
We missed the love cats. So wonderfully, 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 wonderfully pretty. Oh, you know that I do anything for you.
These 3 singles and their respective B-sides were all placed into a compilation album called Japanese Whispers. This would mark their return as a band with a new and distinct sound. This then paved the way for them to be able to delve into all types of musical genres and styles. This would be further proved by their 1984 album, The Top. The Top is a psychedelic fusion of songs that propelled the cURE into a new limelight. The album single, The Caterpillar, reached number 14 in the UK top charts.
And you're beautiful, you glow inside my head. You hold me
The Cure's new sound would be captured later that year in the form of their live album, simply entitled Concert. Recorded in May of 1984 in the Hammersmith Odeon in London, the rough-sounding album perfectly encapsulated the Cure sound and pleased fans greatly. In 1985, the band got busy making their most acclaimed album, The Head on the Door. The album reached the number 7 in the UK albums chart and spawned singles In Between Days and the happy sad song Close to Me. The year 1986 was filled with tours, gigs and live shows. They headlined their first ever Glastonbury that year and also recorded the feature-length film The Cure in Orange, directed by Tim Pope, released in 1987. Riding off the success of their last album, The Cure found themselves in France recording their 7th album, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. The double album was received very well by critics and the band gained good momentum coming off their last album onto this one. The album's stylistic variations propelled them into the American mainstream and got them number 40 in the top 200 Billboard chart. The album was made famous by singles Why Can't I Be You, Catch, and the dreamy pop magnum opus Just Like Heaven. The album also saw the addition of Roger O'Donnell, who would join them on tour. The now sextet were going to go on the Kissing Tour.
Just like heaven.
First demoed in 1988, Disintegration shows the decline in Robert Smith's mental health. As he was fast approaching 30, he believed that his best years were behind him. Smith began writing material on his own, which took a very dark and depressing, dismal tone. The band later met up and compared individual demos and material. Out of 32 songs, only 12 of them made onto the record. Robert Smith felt the pressure to follow up the success of Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. This, along with the transition from being a cult band to a more commercially successful one, didn't sit too well with Robert Smith, as he started relapsing back into the use of hallucinogenic drugs like LSD. This began to affect the work of his 8th album, Disintegration. During the recording process, Lawrence Tolhurst's problems with alcohol became ever more apparent in the studio as he would fail to perform due to his inebriated state. It reached the final straw when the rest of the band threatened to walk if Law wasn't fired, to which he inevitably was. Roger O'Donnell was asked to join full-time in the wake of Lawrence Tolhurst's departure.
You make me feel like I am home again.
Following the release of the album, The Cure was set to tour America, playing stadiums and arenas filled with over 40,000 fans. The tour was tough on the band and Smith in particular, with him relapsing into cocaine as well as LSD during the tour. After the tour ended, Roger O'Donnell subsequently left and he was replaced by Pete Bemonte, who was a guitar technician for The Cure who was going with them. Smith, on the other hand, wanted nothing to do with promoting, touring or producing anything. As far as he was concerned, he was out of the music game. In 1992, the Cure exploded back into the pop scene with their highest charting and most critically acclaimed album, Wish. Wish reached #1 in the UK and #2 in the US, and it received very positive reviews. This is largely credited to the single Friday I'm in Love.
Wednesday, break my heart. Oh, Thursday doesn't even start. It's Friday, I'm in love.
After yet another lineup change with the addition of Jason Cooper on drums and Roger O'Donnell back on keys, the band geared up for a plethora of shows and gigs. In the years spanning from 1996 to 2004, the Cure had released 4 more albums, toured all over the world, and even featured in an episode of South Park due to the creator Trey Parker being a long-time fan of the Cure, and especially Robert Smith.
Am I too late?
Who are you?
Dude, it's Robert Smith of the Cure.
Their albums Wild Mood Swings, Bloodflowers, Greatest Hits and Join the Dots were all released to high acclaim, with some critics citing that the Cure had produced nothing but enduring classics, whereas some critics didn't see it the same way, stating that the album sounded dated and lacked variation. The 12th studio album, simply titled Cure, was produced later that same year and was co-produced by renowned American producer Ross Robinson, who had previously worked for bands such as Limp Bizkit, Slipknot and Korn. This gave the album a heavier sound, which is evident in their single The End of the World. The album artwork was drawn by none other than Robert Smith's nephews and nieces, after he asked them to draw their visualization of a good dream and a bad dream. After releasing yet another album, 413 Dream, the Cure have enjoyed playing shows anywhere and everywhere. They've also received many awards in recognition of their contribution to music, such as the Enemy Godlike Genius Award and their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019. Whether it's too early to speculate whether the Cure are going to release a 14th album, it's hard to deny that they have had a massive impact on youth culture and music as a whole, and that they've definitely made their mark as one of the most influential bands to come out of the 90s and 80s. The Cure's rise to stardom is not a pretty story, but you could say it's just like heaven.
Wow, Robert Smith is the greatest person that ever lived.
Our savior!